Hi everyone, Eric with Timber Creek Collective bringing you my latest piece called Fire Mountain. If you've watched my other videos, you know that I begin each piece by laying it out on a piece of plywood, and I use pencil to do that. But before I really start sketching, I sanded what's going to be the sky. The reason for that is I generally paint my skies, and I just want the paint to go on there nice and smooth. And here you can kind of watch my design process as it happens. See, I've got several different layers of mountains there and decided I didn't like that. There we go. A little better. River? Nope. Nope. Don't like that either. Don't like that either. Hey, what about a boulder sitting on a ledge? Nope. Boulder on a tower? I don't like it there. Sand that all off. How about boulder on a tower on the right side? There we go. Maybe sketch in the river. How's that going to look? There we go. Turns back into the mountains. And here I'm just making some notes to myself as to what width those strips are going to be. And then you'll see here I'm using my 45-degree angle to make some 45-degree reference lines. And you'll see I do quite a few of them. And the reason I do that is I never know exactly where I'm going to need them. And here I'm trying to get the ridge line right. There we go. That's a little better. So these reference lines do two things, and I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Those horizontal lines remind me that, hey, those pieces go horizontal and not on a 45-degree angle. There we go. It's a little better. Now that I've kind of got everything firmed up, I'm going to go ahead and darken everything up. All right, let's move on to paint. I'm going to paint the sky here. I use acrylic paint, and I generally thin it down with water so that it makes more of a wash or a stain. And the reason for that is you can see that there's some dark areas in the plywood there for the sky, and I actually oriented the piece on this plywood in this way for this reason. Those kind of look like clouds. So as I start painting here, you see I mix up several colors, hot pink, there's a purple, did some harvest orange, and some gray, and some yellow. But I ended up not using them all. So I used to do all the wood strip work first and then paint the sky. But I stopped doing that because what I found was that put a lot of stress to get the sky right the first time. And as you saw in my layout process, I didn't get the mountains right the first time. So I started painting the sky first. And that way, if I wasn't happy with it, I could sand it all off and I could start over. So here I'm starting with a little gray. You'll notice I kind of put a little more gray down in those valleys because those are going to be in the distance. I like to use darker colors to make things appear like they're farther away. And as this orange is going on, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, that is awfully strong, awfully bold. And I think that may be because I didn't get the paint watered down quite enough. And the other thing, I don't like how these colors are coming together. But even when I don't like a sky early on, I go ahead and press through it because sometimes it ends up coming together better than I imagined. But not in this case. I think I'm just going to start over. You like those paints dancing around on the work surface there? I didn't notice that until I started editing, but that's pretty funny. All right, got it down close enough there. Redraw my lines. All right, let's try this again. Now you can see I've added more water to my colors here. See how you can see through that orange? You couldn't see through it like that before. And the hot pink was the same way. I've added some more water to it and you can see through it now. And then it needed a different color. Was thinking yellow, but I wasn't sure if that's really what I wanted, or and I also needed to make sure that it was thin enough. So you can see here I did a little test to see how that was going to look if I did it on top of the orange. There we go. I added a little orange too so that it would blend a little better. You see that gave it some interesting highlights. All right. This is a river, so go ahead and paint the water blue, right? Because all rivers are blue. Not really. So here I'm using some of the same colors that I used in the sky to try and make it look like the sky is reflecting off the river, and it looked a lot better after that. I was much happier with it. So with the sky complete, it's time to start with wood strips. And it's really important that you get that first wood strip down flush and square and exactly where you want it, because if you don't, you will fight with it the whole rest of the piece. And you'll see I've got some gel stain there, and what I'm doing with that is I'm putting it on the ends that I have to cut to trim everything to fit, and I am just adding a little stain on the end of the piece of wood so that it doesn't just have a white or a light colored wood edge there. And this begins the most time consuming portion of creating these pieces, and that's fitting everything together. Now this isn't bad because it's along an edge, so one cut is square and the other one I basically just kind of trace in by eye as I go. These aren't that bad. It's when you get into the mountains and the little tight spaces, that's when it becomes more difficult and more time consuming. And overall on this piece, I think I had just shy of 9 hours of actual build time. And so much of that is spent custom fitting those pieces together. You may notice on the top of the boulder that's sitting on top of the tower, I took a little time and kind of used my knife to carve off some of the corner so that it looks like that boulder is sitting on top of that rock tower there. All right. So this is one of the ways that the 45-degree reference angles come into play. Number one, I'm using this to get this first wood strip on straight and at a 45-degree angle, and that way all the rest of them that I put in are at the same angle as well. You may notice over on the left side, I've got a different color stain. That one is called Aged Beryl. It's kind of interesting. You can take a wood strip that really doesn't look very brown, and after you apply that stain, it actually comes out with some brown tones and some gray tones. Kind of an interesting stain. I think that one is by Behr, but I've used it on quite a bit of the work that I've done because it does give a really nice aged look. And I didn't do it on this piece, but I also use vinegar and steel wool, and that is to say steel wool dissolved in vinegar. That also gives kind of a nice rusty brown or sometimes a gray color. It depends on the concentration of the steel wool. And these pieces aren't that bad. You're just fitting it to the contour of the top of that particular mountain, and then cut the 45 at the end. All right, so you can see here I've got the contour gauge out, and this is the other way that those 45-degree reference lines come into play. I can keep the contour gauge at a 45-degree angle, and that way it accurately um, creates the contour that I need to cut into the wood. So I actually use that to keep the contour gauge where I want it. You see that one, once I get it fitted up there, then you can see it's pretty close. And once I get that custom contour filled in, then it's more straight strips and it goes a little quicker. See, I wasn't happy with that first cut, so I made it again. That fit a little better, then I just had to trim the end off. At this stage, I don't worry too much if it doesn't exactly meet the pencil line, because I can cut the strips that are going to adjoin it to the right contour so that they fit together. I really got on a roll here. Oops, just realized that I messed up. I started to cover up my river, and so that's another reason that I use hot glue instead of like construction adhesive or something of that nature. I can actually pry the hot glue up and make a change and then glue it back down, but I have to scrape off all the hot glue. Yeah, see, I didn't like that one either. There we go, that's better. Every once in a while you might notice that I reach up there and grab the eraser and I'll erase something in a painted portion of the piece. And what's happening there, I'm using a paper towel to apply the stain just to dress the raw edges of the wood, and some of that crumbles off onto the piece, and I've found that if it leaves a mark on the acrylic, I can erase it with that soft eraser. That's what I'm doing there. And I don't know why it is, but it feels like this portion of the piece went faster than some of the others. Ironically, it covers more area, seemingly. So I used a little trick on this piece. I cut it to shape, but I didn't actually glue that smaller piece at the bottom right until I had the next strip on, and that way everything butts up clean. You see there's so much custom fitting and contouring and getting everything just right so that it fits together nice. There's another piece that is just needed to be small enough, but it's got to be big enough that you can put glue on it and it stay. And here in a second, I'll glue another one on that is that way. See that piece? It's very small, but it has to be big enough to get glue on it or it won't stick. All right, and this is one of the corners that I hate working myself into, but I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of choice on this. So I began by making the innermost piece where all the pieces come together, and then I work my way out. And I apologize for the view here. I stopped recording to take a phone call, and when I started recording again, I forgot to zoom out. I'm trying to be more consistent, but anyway. So I forgot to tint the ends of these pieces here. And so I'm trying to pry this piece up, and yeah, it's just not cooperating. And if I break that piece, that's okay, but so frustrating. Yes, I actually threw the wood strip. I was so mad. So I had to take a time out, breathe, cool off. And a few moments later, I came back to start fixing the damage. Still mad at myself. It's funny now, but I was pretty upset in the moment. You see I use a chisel here just to clean up, and it doesn't matter the gouges in the plywood, you're not going to see those. But just get all the glue cleaned up where everything glues down nice and flat again. Refit those pieces that I messed up. Still can't believe that I did that. All right, and you can see there was just a little glimpse there of me using the torch. And what I'm doing there is I was torching the pieces that I'm using to fill in here. Makes them look a little darker, makes them look like they're a little further in the background or a little further away, which is what I wanted. Trying to give this piece some depth. One is with coloring, the other is with the thickness of the wood that I'm using. And there's a shot here once we get all the mountains filled in where I show you all the different depths that are in play on this piece. Here again, the contour gauge is very, very helpful. And I think this was a piece that I had to make 3 times in order to get it close. See here, I'm making it one more time. All right, finally got it right. And then I can move on to the rest of the full width pieces. Once you get to this stage, you can go pretty quickly, but trying to fit into those tight corners, things like that, that's very time consuming. Because it's very detailed and everything has to fit or it doesn't look right. And again, one of those little bitty pieces. There we go. And see here again, I'm using that 45-degree reference line to get that first piece nice and straight and on the 45. There we go, working out of a corner again. So you have to make that piece big enough that I can get glue on it, but small enough that it fits into where I need it to go. A little bigger, and then this one will be a little bigger yet, and they get easier as you work out of that little tight space. All right, and here I'm trying something new. I've got, it's basically like a little cigarette lighter, but it's like a mini torch. I know a lot of people use them for cigars and whatnot, but I decided to try and do that for some of my shading with the torch and delineation. Just it burns a narrower area and gives me a little more control. The bigger torch, it can sometimes do too much. But I wanted to try and delineate those two mountains where I'm working right now. All right, I'm going to work the edges here a little bit, and then we're going to get the big torch out. And what I'm doing here is I'm just giving some character or bringing out the grain of the wood, and also doing some shading to give the mountains a little more contour. And here I'm cutting the top flat portion of the middle mountain to fit, and then I will stain it and then use the torch to highlight it as well. There we go. Sweep it off good. All right, let's get some of this stuff out of the way here. And here I'll show you how the different depths come together. See, there's two different thicknesses of wood there. The river is actually on the plywood, and then you've got the boulder on the tower that is more in the foreground because it's thicker pieces, so it stands out closer to your eye. That's kind of a close-up of it. So what do you think about this shot? Do you like that? Let me know in the comments. Also, I tried something a little different on this. I painted the background or the piece that I use as a workspace gray. Does that help at all? Do you like that? Is there another color you think would work better? Let me know. And so here what I'm doing is I'm using my table saw to even up the ends. I'm not taking off much material. I'm just getting everything flush where the frame will go on there nice and square and smooth. Yeah. Yeah, see how clean that is? That'll be a lot easier to frame. Yeah. All right, so I make my own frames. They're not fancy, but I use my compound miter saw to do that. You see I'm taking some measurements back there in the background, and then I will come over to the piece that I've trimmed the end off on a 45. Here I'm sharpening the pencil with a utility knife, and the carpenter's pencils, yes, that's how you sharpen them. Make some measurement marks. And here I have all the pieces cut, and I'm just fitting them together to make sure that they fit the way they're supposed to before I finish them. And there was a couple of pieces that didn't fit just like I wanted them, so I remade one piece, and it fit together a lot better after that. And before I put the frame on, I always like to sign it. Makes it a little easier using my heat pen without the frame there. All right, and there it is with the finished frame. So do you like that gray workspace? And do you like these shots that show you the depth of each piece, the different levels? And also, is there something that you would like to see me try to make? I have ideas, but the list isn't that long, so if there's something you would like me to try and make, let me know that, and if I feel like it's something I can pull off successfully, I will be glad to try it. So here it is finished. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. These things help my channel grow more than I can tell you. If you'd like to see more videos like this, check out my others on my YouTube channel. Until next time, take care, be good to one another, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.